What happens when one of history's most powerful queens simply disappears? Not after defeat or defeat's record, not slain in battle, not buried in tombs declared or uncovered, but erased, obscured, and lost to the pages of her own story. That is the mystery of Nefertiti, royal icon, religious radical, and perhaps Egypt's most enigmatic ruler. She rose alongside the radical Pharaoh Akhenaten, challenged the old order of gods, built a new capital around the sun-God Aten, and redefined Egyptian art, religion, and politics. Then in the blink of a historical eye, her name vanishes. No death date, no tomb confirmed, no farewell carved in stone. The records go silent, and one of antiquity's greatest queens becomes a riddle wrapped in intrigue. In this video, we will set the stage, the world she was born into, the revolution she helped lead, the dramatic turning point when the system cracked, the aftermath that followed, and, most importantly, the long shadow of her disappearance that still fascinates us today. Along the way, we'll tease twists. Was she banished? Did she become Pharaoh herself? Is her tomb hiding behind a sealed door in the Valley of the Kings? And as you'll see, her story echoes into our own times in surprising ways, so buckle in. The Sun-God Aten rises, the capital moves, power shifts, and we begin a chronicle of cause and effect, of ambition, faith, and mystery, culminating in one question: what happened to Nefertiti? Welcome to Echo of Time, the premium destination for deep dives into the world's most fascinating ancient mysteries and unsolved historical puzzles. In the mid-14th century BCE, the 18th dynasty of Egypt was at its peak. Wealthy, cosmopolitan, deeply religious, and tightly bound to the priesthood of the god Amun. That power structure, the priests, the temples, the state reliance on multiple deities and rituals, underpinned not just religion, but economics, governance, land, favor, influence. Into this world stepped Amenhotep IV, later known as Akhenaten, and his queen Nefertiti. Egypt was ripe for change. The priesthoods of Amun had grown dominant, the capital Thebes no longer felt fresh, and foreign relations, especially with Mitanni, the Hittites, and Nubia, were tense. The monarchy sought new ways to assert control, new religious legitimacy, new cultural direction. Nefertiti's origins are obscured. Some evidence suggests she was the daughter of a courtier named Ai, brother to Queen Tiye. Others suspected a Mitanni princess bride. Regardless, she married Amenhotep IV, who became Akhenaten, and emerged as his great royal wife, bearing 6 daughters within about 10 years. What made her remarkable? She appears early in Theban tombs not just as consort, but performing priestly rituals to Aten, riding chariots, and in some later depictions wearing the tall blue crown of a pharaoh. Akhenaten ascended to the throne around 1353 BCE. Almost immediately, he began redirecting Egypt's religious focus from the traditional polytheistic worship centered on Amun and other gods to a new monotheistic-ish worship of the sun disk god Aten. By his 5th year, he officially changed his name to Akhenaten, effective for Aten. He moved the capital north from Thebes to a brand new city, Akhenaten, modern-day Amarna. He closed and defaced many Amun temples, reallocated their wealth, and sought to centralize power around himself and Nefertiti in the image of the Aten. Nefertiti was central to that revolution, appearing almost as frequently as her husband in some temple reliefs, and in roles formerly reserved for pharaohs alone. So here we are, a royal couple overthrowing tradition, shifting religious paradigms, relocating capitals, reshaping art, iconography, and power. It is in this setting that Nefertiti's rise begins, but also where the pressures build. The old order hits back and the stage is set for the breaking point. In about year 5 of his reign, Akhenaten renamed himself and moved the capital to Akhenaten. This move symbolized a rupture from the old gods and the old elite. The new city was built rapidly. Massive reliefs, open courts to the sun disk, a flattening of religious iconography. Nefertiti is depicted as high priestess, model of the Aten, and mother goddess to her daughters. In the city's reliefs, you see Nefertiti standing on an equal footing with her husband. The elongated faces, the intimate family dinners under the rays of Aten, the 6 princesses behind them. In the temple of Hut-ben-ben, she appears as dominant as the pharaoh. Nefertiti's role was unprecedented for an Egyptian queen. In earlier dynasties, queens did have prominence, but the scenes of Nefertiti's power, chariot riding, smiting enemies, quasi-royal headdress, mark a new level. Some scholars suggest that she was elevated to co-regent, essentially ruler alongside Akhenaten. Power was intoxicating, but with change comes resistance. The old priest caste, heavy with land and influence, were stripped of privilege. The traditional religious elite were restrained. The move to Akhenaten displaced old elites. The focus on Aten upset traditional rituals, temple economies, and the balance of power. At the same time, Egypt's external relations were under strain. Resources were being diverted to this new capital. External threats from Nubia and Hittites loomed. Internally, the new art style, elongated limbs, unnatural forms, and the religious shift unsettled many. And so, while the couple reigned in their golden moment, the seeds of undoing were sown. Economic disruption, religious backlash, legitimacy crises, succession uncertainty. The stage is set, but the breaking point is nearer than it appears. One of the greatest crises for any dynasty is succession, and the Akhenaten Nefertiti regime was no exception. Despite 6 daughters, Nefertiti bore no known surviving male heir. The lack of a male successor undermined the future. Some have suggested that this failure diminished her and Akhenaten's power, or triggered court intrigue. Meanwhile, another of Akhenaten's wives, Kia, disappears from the record around the same time. Her tomb and name were erased, and speculation abounds that Nefertiti may have engineered her removal, or that Kia's fall reflected wider unrest. Another possible contributor, the city of Akhenaten and possibly the royal family may have suffered from ill health or plague. Some relics suggest early death of children and daughters, but the evidence is thin and inconclusive, and then almost as suddenly as the rise, Nefertiti's name begins to fade. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, shortly after Akhenaten's 12th regnal year, 1 princess died, 3 disappeared, and Nefertiti vanished from the historical record. What does this mean? Some scholars infer she died or fell from favor. Others suggest she changed her name, was co-regent or even pharaoh under another title. But whatever the case, her disappearance is abrupt, mysterious, and dramatic. A key twist. The figure of Nefertiti appears, female pharaoh, around the end of Akhenaten's reign. Many Egyptologists believe this may in fact be Nefertiti under a new name, ruling alone or with Akhenaten. One inscription found at Deir Abu Hinnis suggests Nefertiti was still alive in year 16 of Akhenaten's reign, which pushes back the earlier disappearance date theory. So the breaking point is not a single moment but a cascade. Loss of heir, religious backlash, internal revolt or marginalization, erasure from records. The revolution crumbles, the queen disappears, and a new phase begins. After Akhenaten's death, c. 1336 BCE, the old gods returned. The cult of Amun regained power, the capital moved back, the art styles reverted, and Amarna was abandoned. The era of the heretic king and his queen was suppressed. During the reign of Tutankhamun, the drive to reinstate traditional religion was strong. Scenes of Akhenaten and Aten were defaced. Nefertiti's memory was possibly erased. Her statues destroyed or altered, her tomb never found. One of the great unanswered questions, where is Nefertiti buried? Her body has never been conclusively identified. No tomb securely attributed to her has been found. A number of candidates exist. One theory by Egyptologist Nicholas Reeves posits hidden chambers behind the walls of Tutankhamun's tomb, KV62, might conceal her burial. Despite radar scans and archaeological investigations, the mystery remains open. The legend of the queen who vanished persists. Despite, or perhaps because of, her disappearance, Nefertiti has become one of the most recognized figures of ancient Egypt. The famous bust discovered in 1912 at Amarna by German archaeologists remains one of the world's most copied sculptures. She stands not just as queen, but as symbol. Beauty, power, revolution, mystery. Her story inspires modern books, documentaries, art, even feminist reinterpretations. The disappearance of Nefertiti invites speculation. Was she exiled? Did she seize power under another name? Did she willingly step aside? Was she killed in a palace coup? Did her religious experiment bury her legacy? These questions resonate because they remind us of power's fragility, memory's malleability, and the vulnerability of even the mighty to erasure. Over decades, archaeologists have attempted to fix the narrative of Nefertiti, Co-regent theory, that she served as co-ruler or pharaoh under the name Nefertiti. Hidden tomb theory, the idea that her burial lies behind sealed doors in the tomb of Tutankhamun. Alternative mummy identifications. The younger lady, found in the tomb of Amenhotep II, KV35, has been suggested as possibly Nefertiti, but data is inconclusive. Erasure and rewriting, that her memory was intentionally obscured by subsequent rulers reversing her legacy. None of these attempts offers a fully conclusive fix. The evidence is tantalizing but not definitive. Why have scholars not resolved the mystery? Several reasons. The evidence is fragmentary. Missing inscriptions, erased names, broken tombs. The political motive to erase or rewrite history means the usual palace records may have been destroyed or altered. The passage of more than 300 years means decay, looting, and excavation errors. The religious revolution led by Akhenaten Nefertiti was itself reversed, so the succeeding regime had reason to destroy traces. In many ways, attempts to fix the narrative of Nefertiti mirror modern efforts to reconstruct lost history, to interpret fragmentary records, to challenge orthodox storylines. And in doing so, we learn about hindsight bias, power, memory, how victors write history, how institutions erase inconvenient truths. The story of Nefertiti and Akhenaten shows, when a powerful regime tries to restructure religion, economics, and culture all at once, it invites backlash. The old religious economic complex, priests, temples, land, wealth, acted as a stabilizer, and when that is destabilized, the consequences can be severe. In modern terms, consider major reforms, economic liberalization, religious or ideological shifts, institutional restructuring that disrupt entrenched power. The reaction may be invisible until it detonates. Nefertiti's disappearance signals that even queens can vanish when the system pushes back. Her vanishing also speaks to how memory works. When a ruler falls out of favor, sometimes their names are erased, statues defaced, monuments repurposed. Modern parallels. Toppled statues, erased regimes, canceled narratives, archives rewritten. We see this not just in ancient Egypt, but in modern authoritarian or transitional regimes. The powerful sometimes sanitize their past. On a more metaphorical level, the hidden tomb theories mean that something crucial was sealed away, unseen for millennia. Similarly, modern institutions bury risk. Financial bubbles hidden in derivatives, social fractures hidden behind facade, authoritarian surveillance systems hidden from public view. Eventually, some of those hidden chambers may open or crumble. Let's look at some data and patterns. In the late Amarna period, the death of princesses and disappearance of royal figures increased dramatically. One inscription shows 5 daughters, then a list of 4 with 2 names effaced. The new city of Akhenaten consumed vast resources. Building materials diverted, traditional temple economies disrupted. This economic shock is akin to large-scale infrastructure projects that destabilize local economies today. The erasure of names, systematic removal of Kia, then Nefertiti, signals that memory control was a tool of power. Historically, many regimes use erasure as control. Stalin's purges, Mao's Cultural Revolution, modern authoritarian rewriting of textbooks. The repeating pattern, reform, disruption of entrenched power, backlash or collapse, erasure or rewriting of the narrative. Nefertiti's story fits this pattern exactly, because the same dynamics are at work today. When a leader or institution tries radical systemic change without managing the entrenched power structures, the risk of collapse is real. When memory is contested, history gets rewritten. When a powerful actor disappears from view, we should ask, who made it happen? Why? And what's been erased? Nefertiti's disappearance reminds us how fragile even absolute power can be, and how dangerous it can be when systems shift too fast without checks. Nefertiti and Akhenaten attempted to centralize religious, political, and economic power around themselves in the Aten. But in doing so, they destabilized the very system that sustained them, the priest-temple complex and the traditional monarchy. Reforms that ignore embedded interests often sow the seeds of their own undoing. The erasure of Nefertiti's name, the destruction of Amarna art, and the obliteration of her tomb show that when regimes fail, they often attempt to expunge their traces. Controlling history and memory is as important as controlling the present. In our time, the battle over archives, rewriting of history books, and cancel culture debates mirror this ancient contest. The fact that Nefertiti's body and tomb have never been conclusively found underscores that when powerful actors remove records, our ability to reconstruct the past is fundamentally compromised. In modern systems too, when institutions hide risk, destroy data, or shut down transparency, the mystery remains, and often the consequences emerge unexpectedly. Here's something to ponder. When a society allows radical change without building consensus, when it ignores the institutions that hold power, when it celebrates iconoclasm without preserving memory, it risks not just failure, but disappearance. Nefertiti's vanishing isn't just a historical curiosity. It is a cautionary tale of what happens when power, reform, and memory collide. What if the tomb remains hidden not because it was never there, but because someone deliberately sealed it? What if there are modern equivalents, buried financial liabilities, hidden surveillance systems, unacknowledged human rights violations that future historians will struggle to reconstruct because we failed to preserve the records? The disappearance of Nefertiti invites us to ask, what are we allowing to disappear now? If you found this journey into ancient Egypt compelling, I invite you to subscribe, like, and share. Let's keep exploring the forgotten corners of history together. Hit that bell icon so you won't miss our next deep dive into another vanished empire or untold legacy. And in the comments below, tell me, which historical figure's disappearance fascinates you most and why? I'll pick a few and we might feature them in future episodes. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't in what we know, but in what has been deliberately hidden.